Hi, guys, and welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I'm Natalia Winkelman, and I'm guest hosting this podcast as another dispatch out of the Tribeca Film Festival, which is running through this Sunday. And so I've seen some good movies since last time, and also this time I have a special guest on, a friend and writing colleague.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aleah Papes. Hi, everyone. I'm Aleah Papes.
So Aleah has been running around Tribeca with me, and we've been able to intersect at a few points. I know you've seen a few that you were particularly interested in. Do you want to start it off?
Sure, yeah. So one of the movies I definitely wanted to talk about is a French-Canadian movie called Slut in a Good Way. Directed by, my French pronunciation is really bad, so I'm sorry, everyone, but directed by Sophie Loren.
I heard that one that's in black and white, right?
Yes, it is all in black and white, which I think is important to the movie if I'm interpreting it correctly. So the movie starts out with the protagonist, Charlotte, who is sort of naive about love and romance, and she has this boyfriend, and she's shopping for lingerie with her friends because she really wants to impress him, and she's like super excited about the idea of having sex with him, and she executes this whole plan with him, and it turns out that he's gay. So it's sort of like a reverse saved intro to the beginning of the story. But so it sets her off on this whole quest to sort of reset her ideas about love and sex and romance.
That's interesting because, I mean, Lady Bird, which was obviously a huge movie of last year, also has a gay boyfriend, and I felt like I hadn't really seen that in a movie until Lady Bird. Not that I think Lady Bird is as groundbreaking as everyone else thinks it is, but I think that is kind of an interesting storyline and something that people are just beginning to feel more comfortable incorporating into high school movies.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I had definitely seen it, in Saved and in Lady Bird. Lady Bird, it felt a little bit more like central to the plot of the movie. Saved, it feels a little bit more like a plot device to sort of get things started.
Saved is that Mandy Moore one, right?
Yes. Yeah, Mandy Moore, Jenna Malone, Patrick Fugit. Yeah, good stuff.
It's a classic.
Mm-hmm. Macaulay Culkin.
Early young Jenna Malone.
Yes. And so in this case, I think it's sort of in between. I kept thinking we were going to return to the boyfriend, that they were going to become friends, but he really is not a character in the movie. He just kind of is there at the start of her journey. But so she and her two close friends, one who is sort of like aggressively political and outspoken about her views and her ideas, and then her other friend, Aube, who's a little bit quieter and more withdrawn and likes to read. They are sort of trying to cheer her up, and they end up going to this toy store, and they look around and see all these cute teenage boys working there, and they get jobs there and start working there. And it's sort of, so we never see their parents in the movie. It's all in black and white. Most of it takes place like in the toy store or on a playground, sometimes in their houses. But when we're in their houses, it's really only like Charlotte's bedroom or Aube's living room while her parents are away. So it's sort of this parentless playground, black and white fantasy world for most of the movie. And even though, so the dialogue and the action of the movie feel very natural, but it is definitely, you definitely get the sense that we're in sort of this world outside of the regular real world.
Yeah, like kind of like a dreamscape, or is it, or like a like a happy-go-lucky world? Because I'm thinking of Frances Ha right now, which is also in black and white, which with that movie contributes to this kind of classical New York feeling, like a Woody Allen Manhattan movie, but also it just makes it feel almost timeless, I guess, and it's about female friendship and this like in a smaller kind of female friendship classical movie.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's sort of like sex playground fantasy world. It's sort of like it has this like sweetness and innocence the way that childhood does, but a lot of the movie is essentially what happens is it turns out that like everyone who works at this toy store is also, we never like meet their managers also, which contributes to the feeling that you're sort of in this playground with all these kids, but that they're all sort of having casual sex with each other. And Charlotte ends up sleeping with all of her male coworkers in the month that they work there. And so that's
a big feat.
Yeah, it is. And there's one sequence in the middle of the movie where she's having sex with all these people, and like I think the image even on the in some of the marketing for the film is her in this box of packing peanuts with this like expression of joy on her face. There's this whole montage where she's like having sex with different people in different places, and it just looks super fun and exciting, like a montage of like kids running around on a playground. Or
did you feel like did you come out of it being like, okay, that was empowering, that, you know, this is actually slut positive, sex positive for young women, or was it more complicated?
Yeah, so I wish you had seen it because I'm so confused about the moral of the movie. Not that movies have to come out with some message at the end, but it's definitely really trying to explore what our attitudes about sex as teenagers and especially as young women should be. And so what happens after that is then people start telling her that she's a slut in a bad way. And it starts to be revealed that like other people maybe weren't so casual about sex, and they had feelings for some of the guys and are mad at her for sleeping with all of them. And she realizes that everyone's been talking about the fact that she's been having sex with everyone, and she thought it was like all under the radar kind of, which seems, I'm not sure how she could have thought that was possible. But there is one guy in the store who she hasn't slept with, and it's the guy who she meets first and who they seem to have like more of a friendship connection. And so he kind of gets upset with, she gets upset with him for being part of the rumors about her, and then he gets upset with her for having slept with everyone. And
oh God, obviously don't go away the ending, yeah. But I'm praying that they don't then have a love story, and it's like, oh, the only boy that I didn't sleep with is the one that can take me seriously, because I have been chaste and pure with this one man, so he is my boyfriend now.
It's definitely not. The story doesn't go in such a simplistic direction to give away as little as possible, but what happens next is that they, all the women decide to abstain from sex. But they do it as a charity fundraiser, so they each have like a jar. All the cashiers have like a jar at their register, and they have people give money to contribute to they say that they're giving up romance for an extended period of time to raise money for this charity.
So it's like a Liz Estrada type thing, or
yeah.
Do they ever make that connection? No, because Chirac and Spike Lee's movie, it's more overtly a Liz Estrada iteration.
Yeah. Well, the weird thing is they're not trying to they're trying to prevent the men from mistreating them in romantic relationships, not to prevent them from doing something else unrelated. So like withholding sex is just about sex and romance, but so like then it kind of goes through some interesting consequences. And then one of the other interesting things about the movie that I think complicates its ideas about sex is that there is a pregnant character. So one of the other young girls at the store has gotten pregnant from someone who works there. We never find out who. Mm-hmm. And so this sort of like actual difficult consequence of this lifestyle is put there for us to look at. But in parts of the movie, because it's so playful, because it's so fun, because for the most part it seems really sex positive, it's like a little bit unclear how we're supposed to take all of that.
Yeah. Well, this is a really good segue to a movie that I really liked called Littlewoods, which is a directorial debut from a young woman named Nia DaCosta, and it's starring Tessa Thompson and Lily James. And this movie is very different. It really is a kind of an empowering sister drama. They play adoptive sisters. But I think one of the most interesting things about the movie is that they live in this kind of boom town in North Dakota near the Canadian border, and it's very remote. The movie sort of engages with the kind of anxieties of living in a remote town like that, and the opioid epidemic and limited healthcare access. But most often the danger to these two women presents in these male characters. So there's one of the characters, Lily James's character, has a young son. And we know that the father of the son he's one of the characters, but he's not really in the picture. He's not helping raise the son. And he's a kind of this like drunken, classic deadbeat guy who then gets involved with this kind of opioid ring, which Tessa Thompson is also involved in. So I thought that was really interesting, just having this movie of kind of, and it's not like these are the bad men and women are good, like, but it's a little bit more subtle than that, but it still does present with all of these more trustworthy female characters and then these kind of deadbeat dudes who are not helpful to these two women whatsoever. And I should say that I really liked this movie a lot. And I thought it was just so confidently directed for a feature debut. And Nia DaCosta both wrote and directed the movie.
Nice. So so when you say that the movie was confident, tell me more about what you mean.
Yeah. So I mean, it's ostensibly kind of a thriller, but I felt like more than just kind of like unfolding in this really, in a thriller, suspenseful way, what was most compelling or what most drew me in was just this intimacy between the two sisters. And so that she is able to allow that to unfold in a really kind of authentic way. So these women feel really alive and like you're rooting for them. And I think that can be really hard. That's really tricky. And it's obviously helped by the fact that Tessa Thompson and Lily James are both really, really good actresses and up-and-comers. But yeah, I felt like you just get the feeling that she had such a hold on the story. She knew where it was going. It was never out of her control. And it just is pretty clean and efficient. And yeah, I thought it was a really, really strong debut.
Nice. Yeah. So anything else about Littlewoods?
You can go on to your next one.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so one other movie, just since we're talking about men and women, another movie I saw that I wanted to talk about was the documentary Phantom Cowboys, which I think was really interesting and exciting. It's like 90 minutes long and it's pretty slow, but it is sort of a portrait of 3 different young men over the course of 7 or 8 years. So we see them at different ages. One I think is 13 and then 20, one's 16 and then 23. I forget exactly how old the third one is, but a similar age. And there's really no narration. We don't ever hear the filmmaker or anyone speak or ask questions of the subjects. That we just sort of see them in their worlds, living their lives. And I think at a time, and because I have so many amazing female cultural writer friends, we spend so much time talking about like what femininity means and how like coming into our own as women works. It was actually really exciting to see something that was about young men and about masculinity. The 3 of them are also in, I would say, fairly, they're in really different environments from where I grew up, where I live now. One is in Larry, who lives in and works in sugarcane fields in Florida. Nick, who is in California in sort of like he works at a plant. To be honest, I'm not actually even sure what kind of plant it is.
Mining, I think?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is mining. And the place is called Trona. And it's sort of like a town where everyone, like, you grow up and then you get a job at the plant and you work with your dad at the plant and then you have a son and he works at the plant. And then the third character, Tyler, who is in West Virginia and races cars on dirt tracks. So, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but do you have any idea how the director found these 3 men? Is there any sort of connective tissue between them? Or is it just kind of, you think he went to these kind of interesting small towns and found these boys to follow through adulthood?
At least in the film, there's no explanation of how he found them or if there is connective tissue between them. I haven't done a lot of reading about it, so I don't know. There may be more of a story behind it. But they... And their lives seem to be quite different. Both Larry and Tyler have kids, but in the older phase of his life, Larry has been in prison and is returning home for the first time and seeing his kid again for the first time. Tyler has been at home and has 4 daughters, and his fatherhood is very important to him. He talks about it a lot in the movie. Nick has no children even when he's older, but he talks about sort of like his idea of building a life for his family. So all their lives are really different. I think there's something about just the passage of time, though, that's really the passage of time and the way it works in real life that's inherently really sad and hard to watch, especially when you're talking to young people about their dreams, about their lives, and then you come back to them 7 years later.
What's that play that we talk about? The play that they're putting on in Lady Bird, but did you about that same thing? Yeah,
so there's this musical, Merrily We Roll Along, which is the musical they're in Lady Bird, which I was in high school too. And it goes backwards in time. So it starts, with the characters as adults when all their dreams have sort of crumbled, and then it ends in like their joyful, naive young state when they think they're gonna make the best art in the world and conquer the world.
And so Phantom Cowboys, you said it's not strictly linear or chronological?
Correct, yeah. So we jump back and forth between the two, which again I think adds to sort of the what's hard to watch and to experience about it, is that you see the older version of the boys, and then you see them as kids when they're with their friends playing. Or
God, I'm honestly getting chills. That is, that kind of thing breaks my heart.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's like it's not even that something has gone tragically wrong. It's just that time moves forward, and it's really hard that you can't go back in real life.
Did you think it had anything? What did you think it had to say about masculinity or about how boys are raised nowadays? Or I guess now these men are in their 40s or 50s now, presently. I assume because of the kids are at the old.
No, they're at the older stage. There, it's just the 2 time periods.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, so they're all like early 20s at the older stage.
And he has 4 daughters in his early 20s?
Yeah.
Oh, I misunderstood. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So again, it's like, they're all, I think all 3 of them are relatively, Nick, the one who works in the mining plant, is like making good money at that point when he has a job, which is like something he talks about being really proud of. So that's definitely like an ongoing theme of the movie, which I think is an important idea about being a parent, being an adult, but definitely about being a man. Is like, can you make an income and provide for people who depend on you, which I think is especially interesting in the case of Tyler because he has a wife and 4 daughters, so it's all women in his life. We don't see a ton of their relationships with other people. We do see their relationships with, we do see Nick's and Tyler's relationships with their fathers, which seem to be pretty positive, I would say. I did wonder, like, there's a lot of visual moments in the movie. So where we're looking at the sugarcane, or we're looking at Nick on his dirt bike, or we're watching Tyler race, or put tires on his car. So there isn't a lot of text in the film, which is really nice because it gives you a lot of time to sort of absorb and think about what's going on. But in terms of like thematics of masculinity, there's just not a lot of material to explore that.
Got it. So that's I guess that's also kind of can be helpful. It's not too prescriptive, but you just get a sense of these 3 of these lives.
Yeah, and I would say there's nothing explicitly in the movie that's like we're exploring what it's like to be a man in America, besides the fact that it's about the filmmaker chose to tell a story about three men. So it's really, really interesting, and I'd like to see it again, honestly, and sort of like keep thinking through it.
Yeah. No, that sounds really beautiful, and it looked. I've seen just like some of the stills, and it looked really like arresting visually.
Yeah, it is. It's very beautiful.
Another movie I wanted to bring up is Zoe, which was the centerpiece of Tribeca, directed by Drake Doremus, who has done like a million movies at this point, it seems. But his most recent ones were Equals and Newness. Have you seen either of these? They're all kind of, at least these 2 most recent ones, and Zoe, which was the one that I saw at the festival, are all these kind of futuristic romances where it deals with like new technology and how that is affecting specifically our romantic and sexual lives. So in Zoe, it stars Ewan McGregor and Aleah Papes, and they both work at this cutting edge technology company, and what this company specializes in is creating these kind of androids that look, they totally look like a regular human, and they're played by regular humans in the movie.
This before.
Right. And they call them synthetics in the movie. And so they're working to design these robot people to be potential partners for humans. And then so I have to say, the movie is sort of a mess. I'm not Drake Dormus's biggest fan in general. A lot of his movies just feel to me kind of like he's trying to make a really, really hip, cool music video with like some synth and like blues and rack focus, man, and like super close up on Ewan McGregor and Aleah Papes. Isn't she gorgeous? And like, so that was sort of bothered me. But more so, what bothered me is just that it was all the ideas were like really half baked, and then halfway through the movie it takes this turn where it gets really interested all of a sudden in this new technology that the company has created, which is a pill that you take, which can emulate the feeling of falling in love. So you and anyone, a random person, could both take this pill at the same time, and then you would all have a high for a night of feeling like you're falling in love, which I think actually sounds pretty amazing and maybe is kind of doable, because you know what it feels like to fall in love. It's like you're butterflies and you're so excited, and like people have told me that like being on Molly is similar. So maybe it's just they're taking Molly, but
Wait, is the idea behind the pills, it's temporary though? It's not like...
Right, okay. It's temporary. So you could take it kind of as a comment upon like a Tinder or even just a one-night stand, like getting drunk and meeting someone at a bar, because you can sort of fool yourself into feeling really close to someone for a night, even if you are not compatible the next morning. And so that part was more interesting. It just didn't really fit in with the whole android thing. It was too much, all wrapped into one movie. It was kind of a mess. The arcs didn't really make sense. Ewan McGregor is so overwrought the entire movie. He's like constantly just like puppy dog eyes like around everyone. Like, I'm so lost. I'm so depressed. I don't know who to love. I don't know how to love.
Is he an android? Or am I not supposed to know the answer to that question?
I'm not going to tell you who or who isn't an android, because there are some twists there. But I can say that there are great cameos by Rashida Jones and Christina Aguilera, of all people. What? And Christina Aguilera does play a sex robot. I think that was interesting part of the movie, and this isn't even really central to the plot, but is that there's this kind of underground brothel, and it's all robots, all android women. And so men can go there, and it's not illegal because it's not actually women whom they're paying to have sex with. It's these android women. And so Christina Aguilera plays one of these sex robot people.
So is part of the question of the movie, so like I like science fiction a lot, like going back to Battlestar Galactica, which is sort of my first experience with do we care about the robots or not, is part of the question of the movie whether or not that is morally acceptable?
Yes, definitely. It is more, yeah. Especially because humans have created these androids. It's kind of, there's also this whole idea of like, I made you, so you are sort of like me. So does that mean that I'm falling in love with myself by falling in love with you? And especially because Ewan McGregor owns the thing, and so he's the one that sort of designs these weird people, or these robot people. So there is a kind of like a narcissistic element to it. And so I think it's also kind of like, to me, I walked out and I was like, that was a half-baked version of Spike Jonze's Her. Like, Her, to me, was beautiful for so many reasons. Like, I really believed his relationship with Scarlett Johansson in that movie. But also the set design was just incredible, and there were so many little details that made that one just so different from other sci-fi movies. But this one, the relationships you didn't really understand why it just didn't feel real. You didn't care.
Yeah, I mean, I also am sort of like, this is not, the pill idea sounds interesting. It sounds like maybe there were a bunch of interesting ideas in this movie, and the android one was perhaps not the star of the show. And it's a little bit like we're seeing that so much right now, and we've seen it in Black Mirror and Westworld.
Well, yes. So I wanted to ask you about that because I know that any sci-fi these days is doomed to be compared to a Black Mirror episode. And so you could either literally, there's going to be headlines that are like, Zoe is the best Black Mirror episode, or a version of or the worst Black Mirror episode, or a great version of Westworld or whatever. And it's just I get that, and I understand that that's our touchstone right now for that type of storyline, that technology meets human behavior. But I wonder if that's actually holding us back, and we're not actually able to engage with new stories. Because when Her came out, Black Mirror wasn't a thing, and nobody was like, this is like Twilight Zone,
Yeah, I mean, Black Mirror is also, it's an anthology series, so every episode is kind of different, is a little bit different, in the style and tone. And so even if you want to explore a similar idea, you can do it in a totally different way. Even if you just look at Her and Ex Machina and Battlestar Galactica and Westworld, those are all really different approaches to the same question. Mm-hmm. I think maybe it's just a matter of people want to say Black Mirror because they know people are excited about it, and so they want people to click on it and read about read their article, read about their movie. So the comparison is just a useful marketing tool. Right. But yeah, it doesn't seem useful from a critical perspective.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, if I was a filmmaker right now working with one of these storylines, it is kind of intimidating because Black Mirror is just pumping these little things out, and they're each about an hour long. I've only seen a few from scattered from each season, but they can have a hit and a miss, and all they need is a few ones to hit, and then have a 5 that suck, and it's still wow, this season of Black Mirror is pretty good. Yeah, right. Whereas if you're spending all this time working towards this movie called Zoe about androids and also a pill that makes you fall in love with each other and it doesn't make any sense, then it sucks if it's a miss, and you can't just rely on all the other 1-hour episodes to make this name for yourself with these kind of themes.
Yeah, right. Totally. I mean, I think this is going to be an ongoing struggle in the journey forward with TV becoming better, and then also TV becoming episodes that are over an hour long that are anthologies. A season of Black Mirror is basically just a bunch of very short movies, mm-hmm. Which is, I think, where TV and movies are going to start to really conflict more as we go forward. But I do think it's also a product of sort of the excitement about genres that used to be relegated to sort of second-class craftsmanship in a lot of ways, like sci-fi and horror and fantasy. And so, so I think that's I think we only have more Black Mirror type comparisons ahead.
Right. No, that's actually a really good point to make, that there is kind of a newfound movement towards genre. Even with Stranger Things, is sort of
that's the other one that everyone's oh, there's a monster. It's just like Stranger Things. Oh, right. It's about kids. It's just like Stranger Things.
Right. I mean, it just shows how ubiquitous TV has become, mm-hmm. which is great. But this is why we need festivals like Tribeca also to get us excited about all these other movies as well.
Totally.
Well, I know that you have to run, and both have a busy next few days before the festival ends, but thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Do you want to share your social handles so people can follow you?
Yes. You guys can find me on Twitter. My handle's a little bit hard to spell, but if you type my name into the search bar, you'll find me. It's Aleah Papes, Aleah.
And you can find me at Natalia Wink, Winke. Thanks so much for listening, and let's get out of here.